Hey everybody, welcome to my home and welcome to my channel, A Ginger Can. My name is Brian and today a ginger can. No, we're not going to do the can. We're going to can some ground beef today. I know it looks like a lot, it's about 12 pounds and I'll get into the reason why. One of the reasons you want to get into canning is just to have food saved. I've lost my refrigerator 3 times, so the freezer, everything had to be emptied out. I've lost food. I never got reimbursed for that, even though I had a protection plan. It's a bad situation to be in. You don't know when you're going to lose power. You don't know if the supply chain is going to be interrupted. And right now is a crazy time in the world. I don't know how far into the future you're watching this, but if it's too far and you don't remember April, May, March of 2020, go back and look at that. It was a very interesting time for the world and specifically for the United States. When it all kicked off in around March, people went nuts. They were hoarding all sorts of weird things, toilet paper. I watched a woman check out of one of the larger stores 13 gallons of milk. What are you going to do with 13 gallons of milk before it spoils? How big is your refrigerator? So like I said, it looks like I have a lot of meat here and it's 12 pounds and that's for a couple of reasons. One, I don't have any canned ground beef at the time. I've only recently gotten into canning. And you don't want to waste a session. This generates a lot of heat. This uses up a lot of energy. This is a 14 pint, 7 quart canner. 12 is about what I'm looking for. Hopefully I get that once we cook this all down. So you're going to need a couple of things for this. Obviously you're going to need canning jars, lids, and rings. They got to be clean. They got to be super clean. You need the meat that you're going to can. Here we've got about 85% lean, and that's important because fat, grease, oils, they all break down and they turn rancid. So we're going to be cooking this down and we're going to be draining out the fat. Save the fat though in a different jar in the freezer because you can always reuse that. You're going to need something to cook the meat in. This is a 9 quart cast iron Dutch oven, and I'd really like to thank my friends over at Bumblebee Junction, Mark and Tina, for giving me the opportunity to win this from their channel. It was several months ago and we've become good friends since then. So you'll need a big pot to cook this in. The bigger the better. It's a lot of meat, and if you can only do small batches, then so be it. Do what you can. And then obviously you'll need a pressure canner. Like I said, this is a 7 quart, 14 pint pressure canner. Comes with stands, and you'll need these. I found that I like using this one on the bottom because it gets the jars up a little bit more off the bottom. Since we are doing pints, it'll go between the 2 layers. First things first, what we're going to do is we're going to cook down this meat. While the meat's cooking, I'm going to wash my jars. And this is going to be a hot pack. And what that means is the jars are hot, the meat's hot, this is hot as well. You've got water in here and it's starting to get warm. What I like to do is, once my jars are clean, my oven here has a warm and hold feature. Once my cans are washed, even though they're wet, I'll put them in there. They'll dry off and I can leave the door cracked to get the water out. I'll get the lids cleaned while the meat's cooking down, and that'll save me a lot of time. Let's get started with the meat. I'm not going to bore you. Cook your ground beef. I'm going to do the same, and then we'll come back together and we'll start getting the jars filled and put them into the canner because I've got some really good tips about your first canner. So I'll catch you in a couple of minutes. And I'm back. I cooked down the 12 pounds, 12 and a half pounds of ground beef. I'm using pint jars, which will net me about a pound a jar, and that's about what I use to cook any meal, is about a pound of ground beef. If I need more, then I can always grab another jar. If you do quarts, that's 2 pounds, and if you're not using 2 pounds of meat, it goes in the fridge and you have to use it quickly. The other thing is, you don't want this to brown. You want this to lose its pink and then stop cooking it because it's going to cook further in the canner. So what we got here is I've got towels down because when these jars come out, they're going to be hot. You don't want to do that kind of shock and shatter a jar or crack it. That's bad news. I've got my rings, my lids, my little magnet doohickey for the lids, my jar grabber, my funnel, and my measuring stick. Some people say you should boil the lids or at least get them warm. I found that you don't have to do that. The manufacturer says you don't have to do that. I follow what the manufacturer says. They should know what they're talking about. So I don't do that. Plus the jars are warm, but I can still handle them. So that'll help the seal. I've got my pressure canner starting to get warm. Follow your manufacturer directions on that as well. Put in the amount of water it says. Mine says 2 to 3 inches. I do 2.5, 3 inches just to be safe. And I've got the bottom rack in so I can just start putting jars in. So that's getting warmed up. That's still warm. I'm going to kill this One thing I forgot to mention while I was cooking this is when you're taking it out of the pan, use a slotted spoon because you want to reserve all that oil and drippings. You don't want it in here, and I'm going to use the same slotted spoon to put it into the jars so that while it's still draining, I know it is, so it stays out of the jars. Reserve that in the freezer. You can always use that later. Adds more flavor to it. Like I said, this is an 85% lean ground beef. You want as lean as possible because you really want your money's worth. You want to look for sales and then can it quickly. I bought this a couple days ago on sale. I knew I had to get it canned quickly. That's what we're doing today. Don't buy expensive meats. In fact, when you're talking about meat canning, ground beef is the only beef I will can because I like a good steak. I barbecue. Ground beef is ground beef. Chicken, I'll can. I do like to grill chicken occasionally, but I can can chicken. But yeah, look for sales. Shop around. Don't go to one place. The big warehouse stores don't always have the best price, especially with chicken, I found out recently. So let's get a jar out and we'll get this processed. Okay, maybe I can't handle those. That is warm. And if you're scooping this out and you see big chunks, go ahead and break them down. The other reason I have towels is I get messy. Get this tapped in there. You want to pack it as tightly as you can. I know some of you are out there screaming, "Oh my God, he forgot his vinegar. He talked about putting a lid on and he doesn't have vinegar out." We want about an inch, inch and a quarter of headspace. That jar is still really warm. That looks about an inch and a quarter. Just about. So we'll put that off to the side. What I like to do is I like to do the vinegar all at one time, so that's why I'm doing this. And if this is too hot, we've got our jar grabbers. Woo! As it slips, and that's scary. And to save you from having to watch me do this 10 or 12 times, I'm going to stop the video now, and we'll come back to me putting the lids on with the vinegar wipe. So I'll be back in a little bit. Hey everyone, I'm back. And as you can see, I ended up with more meat than I expected. Like I said, this is 12.5 pounds of 85% lean, and I was expecting 10, maybe 11 jars, because again, we render out the fat, so that's weight that we lose, the water we lose. I was pleasantly surprised to have almost 13 jars. Now, there's a spoon in this one, and you can see I'm actually stealing from it, and I'm really packing this down. So it was going to be 13. I was excited about that, but no, it's 12 jars. We'll have tacos tonight. I'll add some taco seasoning to that, so I don't need this lid and screw. So we've got our 12 jars prepped. You can see it's a mess. I'm messy. It is what it is. And they're cooled down a lot. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it's supposed to be a hot pack. Do what you can. I mean, it's not going to be a cold pack, it's at least going to be a warm pack. So, I've got my little bowl of vinegar, and no matter how careful you are, you're going to get bits along the rim, and then you're not going to get a good seal, and things will go bad fast. So, what I like to do is I'll take my messy towel, I'll wipe it off first, and then I'll hit it again with the vinegar. This will get the bigger particles off. Our vinegar, I like to start in the corner and then just work my way down the long edge. And this just makes sure there's no grease or food particles along the rim, because you really want that seal. I have, so far, knock on wood, I have not had a jar not seal. But if you do, and it can happen, you got to use it. You got to use it. You got to put it in the refrigerator and get it used. Don't put it in your pantry. And there's a little vinegar on the rim. That's okay too. It's not going to change the taste. It's not going to do anything. It'll boil off. So as you're putting these on, you want them finger tight and then just a little bit more, because gases have to escape, and that's how it creates a seal. It creates a vacuum inside. Now, something you'll notice is I don't have a lot of clearance here, and I'll get into that when we try to put the lid on. So for now, I'm going to bring the canner out so we can get these jars in. Now for the lid. As I mentioned, I have a bit of a space problem. When I was looking at our pressure canner, Everything said measure, measure, measure. And I measured. I measured 2 or 3 times. And I made sure there was enough space between my stovetop and my microwave for the canner to fit. What I didn't include was the space to actually put the lid on. So it has to be out a little bit. Keep that in mind when you're looking for a pressure canner. Make sure it fits. And if you can't get the lid on, make sure you're comfortable with moving it around, because again, it gets heavy. So let's get this lid on. So now we wait. This is the longest part of canning. The first part's all labor intensive. Now it's just waiting. So what we're waiting for is this little valve to have a steady stream of steam coming out of it. With this on high and it's already heated up a little bit, this will probably take about half an hour. So I'm not going to make you watch this for half an hour, because we all know a watched pot does not boil. So we'll come back to this. I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, we're back, and it's been about half an hour, and you can hear the steam. Don't stick your hand in there for too long. So you'll occasionally see white puffs. I listen for the sound. This is a good sound. You can hear the water up to a good boil. The steam's coming out pretty solidly now. So we'll turn this down a little bit. And for my altitude, I use a 10-pound weight. And now we just wait. This will start to dance around, it'll jiggle. That's why they call it a jiggler. This will come up to about 10 or 11, and that's when we start the timer. Now, since we're doing pints, it's an hour and 15 minutes. If we're doing quarts, it's an hour and a half. So since these are pints, it's an hour and 15 minutes. So we'll wait, come back when this starts dancing, and we'll go from there. I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, we're back. The water's still on pretty high. The jiggler is jiggling. And we're at 11 pounds. So we're going to drop the heat just enough, because you want this to keep dancing, but you don't want it to be dancing like this. There's a lot of pressure built up right now. So we're going to let it come down gradually. And this is when we start the timer. It is an hour and 15 minutes from now. This keeps dancing. You can go about your day as long as you can hear this. Just keep an ear open. You want it to keep dancing around like this. And you can see, since I turned the heat down, the pressure is dropping a little bit. And that's why it stops dancing. Like that. So, we'll come back in an hour and 15 minutes. We'll let this rest a little bit, and then we'll take everything out. I'll see you then. Okay, I'm back. It's been about an hour and a half. I just killed the heat. The jiggler's calming down. We're still above 10 psi. So now we let this sit for at least an hour, about an hour. This needs to read 0 before you even touch that. And when you do touch it, it's going to be hotter than sin. So be careful. Don't burn yourself. Use some tongs or something, or an oven mitt. So like I said, we're going to let this sit until this is 0. It's about an hour. All the heat's off. This is just sitting. We can go out and do some gardening, get the kids out. I don't have to pay attention to this as much anymore. See you in about an hour. And I'm back one last time. I don't know if you can tell, but it's been more than an hour. This actually finished in about 30 minutes. It dropped down from 11 to 0 in about 30 minutes. When I went to the store, and then it was time for Daniel Tiger for the boys, and that was lunchtime, and I'm not going to record a video with little boys eating, because it's not quiet. So, it is at 0. It is still warm. So I'm going to add some tongs. Take the weight off, it's going to be noisy. Well, or not. Usually if you do this right when it hits 0, there is still some pressure built in, but it's been a while. Now for the fun part. As I told you before, I can't get the lid on and off with it here under the microwave. So I'm going to lift the entire thing and move it here. Because even shifting it a little bit, it's still pretty hard to get the jars out. So let's get this moved as safely as we can. We have to be very careful that we don't shake it too much or tilt it too much, because we don't want the jar shifting around. Everything is looking like it's sealed. It's still boiling inside. I don't know if you can see it, but it's still bubbling inside. I didn't add any water to these, but there's plenty of liquid in there, and it's still bubbling. Again, very hot jars, get a towel. You don't want to shock them. So yeah, that's how a ginger can
canned ground beef. It's a great project. It takes a lot of time. It is very labor intensive in the very beginning because you've got to cook all this meat, and cooking 12 pounds of beef is intense. Not everyone's going to have a 9-quart Dutch oven like I do. Do what you can. Again, it's supposed to be a hot pack. Do what you can. At least warm pack it. As I was doing this, the jars cooled off before I put them in the water a lot. So it was more or less a warm pack. So that's all I got today. Thanks for sticking around. I hope you found this entertaining and informational. If you like this, please like, share, and subscribe. Same thing, notification bell is always there. Again, I want to give a huge shout out to Mark and Tina over at Bumblebee Junction for giving me the opportunity to win that 9-quart. I thought he said 9-inch pan at first. I'm like, well, I have an 8-inch. Well, okay, a free pan's a free pan. But then this giant box showed up, and I was blown away. So again, Mark and Tina, thank you. Again, that's all I got. Thank you for watching A Ginger Can. And if a ginger can do it, I believe you can too.